Welcome to the KIPS Personal Trainer Application Podcast. My name is Tyler Silenzi. I'm the owner of Time to Train Fitness and KIPS. Today we have a topic that if you are in the US, you've been in the industry, or you're entering the industry, you've probably never thought about how are things going outside of the US? How are things in Mexico? How are things in Canada? These are things that you never really think about, but they could be very beneficial for networking, for if you wanted to offer your services across the globe. So today, our guest, Karyn Silenzi, and I apologize if I mispronounced the last name right there. I've been practicing in my head, but if you could start us off with talking about how are things right now. So when we're recording this is January 2021, and how are things going in the fitness industry up in Canada?
Thanks so much for that, Tyler. And can I just say how absolutely thrilled I am to be speaking with you today. And you
Yes.
also nailed the pronunciation of my last name. Well
Boom.
done.
Nailed it.
Yes. So to say that things are in flux up here in Canada would be an understatement. When it comes to gyms across Canada, and here in Canada, we've got all of the different provinces, which, similar to the US, the different states are governed by different individuals and they're all enforcing different rules. The same thing is happening here in Canada. I can say that there are continued lockdowns across the country, with small pockets where gyms and certain classes at significantly reduced capacity are still open for business. However, it is significantly, let's just say that businesses are significantly being impacted with what's happening right now. And yeah, we have a wonderful organization up here in Canada called the Fitness Industry Council of Canada. And it's not-for-profit trade association that represents the voice of all of the different fitness facility operators across Canada. And what the FIC does is they pursue kind of like a legislative agenda in order to improve the fitness industry for consumers and operators. And they are the go-between of the club owners, operators, and the government.
Okay.
They have been working so incredibly hard to support the fitness industry. When I take a look at the fitness facilities in Canada, they're generating over $4 billion in revenue annually. And I should say they were generating $4 billion in revenue. And employees or employers of tens of thousands of individuals, representing the large across the country facilities to the small independent and boutique clubs. And they are truly trying to help us out, because the changes in what we're seeing happening across Canada when it comes to the health and fitness of our population, it's significant. So in March of last year, we had 6,587 different fitness facilities with over 6 million members across the country. In the first lockdown, I think those clubs were operating perhaps at around 60% of pre-pandemic revenues. But now that they've been shut down again, it's dire. So we got a lot going on.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things that I'll say in comparison with north of the border in Canada and in the States, and similar in terms of states have different regulations. Pretty recently, I had another guest from Canada, from Ontario, and she was explaining to me how it's regional, kind of where she lives, by color zones. And if it goes up or down, it can go in lockdown or things could open up. So it was interesting to hear these types of things, because in different areas in the States, different states have different regulations, how things are opening up, plans for whatnot. So I'm always interested to hear how things are in different countries as well. And along that same note is about at-home fitness, because that's one of the things that you and I have talked about outside of the podcast, have chimed in on different threads on Facebook about at-home fitness and setups and all that kind of good stuff. But something interesting that I was I came across when I was talking with a contact of mine that's in France was she was mentioning how at-home fitness is actually not something that people like there, that her population, her gym members do not like it. They would rather be in person. They would rather see. And so anytime that they tried to give them homework or anything that was at home through Zoom, they just would not participate, and it was just not as favorable. So in Canada, has at-home fitness become a boom, or is it not as favorable?
I love that you brought this point up, because I often have to question if we are looking at this from too narrow of a scope.
Mm-hmm.
Because anyone who has taught in different countries, and let's face it right now, as fitness professionals, our audience is now a global scale. There is nothing stopping us from training someone in France or in Europe, other areas of Europe, or in the States. So it's very interesting, because you are absolutely correct. There are individuals who don't want to work out at home. It's not the same feel. What I've been finding with individuals and speaking with individuals is they're having a very difficult time making the at-home workouts be profitable for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a very important point, because if it's not profitable, they are spending time and resources on something that's not bringing them any money. And so it will not continue for that individual. And leading or adding on to that, I should say, then you have all these people that are simply just waiting for the gyms to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the gyms do open up, there's not going to be as many still in operation. And so I really do think that the people that aren't able to focus their abilities and their attention and really focus on making a go of the virtual fitness classes or one-on-one bi-directional personal training, I think they need to, because the landscape has changed forever.
Oh, yeah.
So I wouldn't say necessarily that it's booming, but it's also not a bust yet. People are still trying to adapt. And I had another conversation just this morning about this. People are tired, because they're tired of trying to make a go of it on their own, because they also have all of this stress of kids at home, and maybe their jobs have been impacted. Maybe they no longer have a job. Maybe they're just trying to work through these issues that are concerning them on a personal scale, and it's not allowing them to embrace the positivity that comes with being able to do a fitness class from your home, whether you're teaching it or attending. So I would love to see virtual take off, but I think people are tired and they don't quite know which way to go to make it work.
Lots of good stuff right there. Lots to unpack, but also I love how you framed it there for both sides. With myself, and I don't mean to steer this towards me on this, but with myself, I've worked out at home for years. I have a nice at-home gym that I've put together over time, and at other spots where I've lived, always kind of had some at-home gear. At one spot, had a very out of college startup at-home gym with cheaper equipment, but I've always enjoyed it just for the time saving. That instead of jumping my car, driving 15 minutes, and then working out, and then driving back 15 minutes, that 30 minutes is somewhere else that I can place that time. So it's always been a convenience thing for me. So when at home became much bigger, it was just like normal for me. But I can see with others, creating a space, creating the time, it can be difficult. Then when we talk about instructors, that was something that you and I were just chatting about with, if they weren't used to it or potentially getting more into it, it can lead to burnout. But on the flip side of it, if they haven't embraced it, they're going to have a tough time. And we know that. There's a lot to unpack with that home training. And so I feel bad when some instructors don't know how to create a website, do social media, because it's difficult to learn sometimes and things are adapting. And so with that in mind, the whole starting a business, getting going, being competitive with it can be an uphill battle. But I will say that there are resources out there to help you. So let's switch back now to talking about the differences with the fitness industry in Canada and how we'll say someone even goes about being a personal trainer. So let's just start at the beginning here. So how does someone become a personal trainer in Canada?
So in Canada right now, Tyler, there are 4 primary national certifying bodies. So we've got the Canadian Society of Exercise Physiology, which we call CSEP, Canadian Fitness Education Services, CFES, CanFitPro, which is Canadian Fitness Professionals, and then there is the Certified Personal Trainers Network. So each of these bodies have their own education and training prerequisites, so now what that means is that, well, I'll give you an example. So CSEP requires a diploma or a degree in an exercise related field, whereas CFES and CanFitPro, they require experience or workshops. So you can, for example, CanFitPro, you can study for your CanFitPro group fitness or personal training certification at home. You can choose to purchase additional learning aids or attend workshops, and then you write the exam. Whereas something like CSEP, you are going to a specific educational platform where you are taking classes X number of hours for X number of weeks in order to build up the critical concepts within each area that you must understand. So on top of that, so that's just the national certifying bodies. On top of that, we've got the YMCA's National Exercise Prescription Accreditation, and also ACE, so American Council on Exercise. So you can get these certifications. However, what's important to note is that they may not be recognized at all facilities in Canada, which is interesting because it really leaves people in a state of not knowing which direction to go. Then add on top of that, it's kind of like the Christmas lights. Do you know what, in November, when you go to pull the Christmas lights out of the little box that they've been sitting in for however many months, and it's a tangled mess? That's kind of what it feels like for someone who's trying to figure out which route do I go and what is going to be the best certification to get, which I am sure coming from the US, you can 100% appreciate. So on top of the national certifying bodies, we've got the provinces. So each province has their own certification body. However, these are not transferable to the other provinces. So if you live in Alberta and you get your group fitness instructor certification through AFLCA, and then you move to BC, you then have to recertify under that province.
Oh boy.
Right? Yeah. So it's not as simple. And I think there in the US, I think, you would definitely be more of a subject expert in this, but I think there's probably over 100 different certifications, and I'm putting air quotes on those certifications because some of them are recognized and others are not. So you have to do some due diligence before you decide which route to take.
With the US, there are roughly 10 accredited personal training certifications, and then a lot more that are not accredited. With what you just mentioned, what I thought was very fascinating, just because having worked on multiple accreditation applications and working on the education side of the industry, to hear that in Canada, ACE might not be accepted in some places, I'm not going to say that it's funny, but it's just one of those things that when you think about the US and how things are different with the fitness industry, sometimes you see job postings or even on Facebook that people will say that, oh, I am the manager at XYZ and we only accept ACE, and then they'll mention a couple other ones. So it's quite interesting to hear that. But then at the same time, you could see why, because based on the different provinces, but also the regulations that are in place, why something like ACE might not, just because it is just a physical exam. What I will add on top of this that I like is that with the provinces, the different requirements, whether it's a degree or some type of workshop, that the hands-on, and I know that's something that you and I have talked about, is with the hands-on portion, and that how some in the States do not have that. So those are things that are differences, but I could see some benefits definitely in there. Is group fitness and certifications within that realm, are they regulated or along the same lines?
So let's talk about regulation for a moment here. And before I get into that, I want to touch back on the point that you just made, Tyler, that is so critical. And I'll use ACE as an example. So I just wrote my group fitness instructor examination through ACE because I do present in both Canada and the US. And in order for any presentations or webinars or conferences that I present at, in order for them to be able to provide continuing education credits, I have to have the US ACE accreditation or certification. And so I wrote the exam and I was so surprised because when I was writing the exam in Canada, in order to get the certification, you must, as you mentioned, do a practical exam in addition to the theory exam. So you've got that hands-on work and you can show that you can critically apply the concepts to real life experiences. So you are teaching either a one-on-one personal training class in the case of personal training, or you're teaching a group fitness class to a minimum number of members so that we can say, yeah, you're able to critically apply the knowledge that you have learned. So going back to the ACE situation, if you are a Canadian and you want to get a job in Canada teaching group fitness or doing personal training, and you come and you say, look, I did my ACE certification, it's NCCA approved, hire me. Most of the gyms or facilities here will say, you need to take that practical examination before we will recognize this. So I think that's good, right? Because that is an extra layer that we've added on. So now just to go back to regulation. So much like the US, personal training and group fitness industry in Canada is unregulated. Add on to that the fact that it is incumbent upon whichever facility is doing the hiring to determine what, if any, certifications are required of either their employees or contractors. And you quickly realize that it's a little bit like the Wild West, where some rules don't apply. So different fitness industry employers and gyms, they will definitely vary in whether they'll hire fitness instructors or personal trainers based on their level of certification or require that they hold a university degree. Unlike the US, Canada does not have that third-party agency or those third-party agencies that accredit the certifications. So it's interesting because Canada is significantly smaller in population than the US. But just being able to remove that third-party agency has allowed us to keep things a little bit more streamlined.
Yeah.
But the real risk here is in Canada, in the US, people can call themselves personal trainers or group fitness instructors, whether they have the experience or the certification.
Yeah. I think we're starting to see some of that though in the States, in my opinion. And this is kind of thinking outside the box here. But on social media, nobody knows if they're actually a certified
Yeah.
trainer. They can just say they're a personal trainer. But when we're mentioning all this stuff and the differences, I was debating where I want to take this part of it because it's based off of my experiences and where I've worked, but also I'll say friends of mine within the industry, networking friends, and through the years I've made a handful of friends they've been or are currently director of educations for different gym chains, big gym chains, 40 plus, 50
Mhm.
plus chains, or 300 plus chains across the globe. And so their perspectives are much different than, we'll say, the GM of that gym or a vice president of their gym because of the educational component. But something interesting that pretty recently, when I was talking with a friend of mine off a recording, we were chatting about direction, but where can we see things being beneficial, and with this person specifically, and the way that his position works, he gets approached by multiple organizations, them wanting to, okay, you guys just use our certification or just use this. And, based off of his own education, his background, he either says yes, no, but then we were just chatting about what is potential answers. And something interesting that he mentioned was how he would much rather hire or have hired personal trainers that have gone through some type of vocational school, because the way that he put it was that it's much more likely that a trainer with weeks of schooling is going to be much more prepared than someone that just took an examination. And so in the US, all you need, and this is where you and I will, sometimes I'll just say laugh when we see some people post about these things when they talk about certifications and whatnot, and they don't know the differences in the certification compared to the other one. But somebody with experience, with hands on, that comes out of a school after 8 weeks, 10 weeks, I think we could agree that that is something great. That could be an answer. But of course, there's so much red tape behind it to get that type of change. But I 100% agree with what you were saying with the requirement in Canada for the hands-on and making people get those, because I think that this all leads into that you're only going to get better trainers, potentially trainers that can stick around longer, potentially trainers that have better programming, and hopefully help that gym chain or gym grow, right?
Mhm. 100%. And I saw a comment the other day, and I don't know if you saw it either, but it just floored me. It was an individual that had failed their ACE exam the first time around. So they reached out to a Facebook group and they said, hey, where can I find the cheapest, the fastest, and the easiest certification program? Because I've already failed this one and I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
And my first thought was, should you be in charge of the health and well-being of other people if you are looking for fast, cheap, and easy? Because I know what my answer was. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, I would not want to work with someone like that or have someone like that teaching me what I knew or teaching me what I had to do. So it's so complicated because people are looking for shortcuts,
Mm-hmm.
but that is not what we need in our industry.
Oh yeah.
Not at all.
Oh yeah. To kind of go off of that and kind of unpack some stuff even more with certifications, specifically in the US. So the mindset, no, I can't agree with that 100%. Do not agree with that mindset. But I will say, and these are certain circumstances, because in theory, and some people might tell me that I'm wrong, but again, from my experience, I've worked on many different applications, accreditation applications for different organizations. I know the steps that go into them, how they're developed, all the different panels. So I have a pretty good grasp of how these exams are created and how the accreditation goes about. So, in theory, these are developed so that it's a standard, so that this is an entry level standard to become a certified personal trainer within the United States. So, whenever somebody's ever asked me in the past, and this is a question I haven't probably answered in a while, but it was more when I worked for these companies, different companies, was that I would always tell them to get whatever is actually the cheapest accredited certification because it is an entry level certification. And what you do after is going to help you build your career. That all the entry level certifications out there, they're all technically developed the same with this. The exam is developed in mind that they all go through the same standards and it is entry level requirement to pass. I think anybody with more education can probably say, probably a chapter about exercise phys or biomechanics is probably not gonna, do you much to begin as an entry level trainer. So what you acquire after is really going to help you build a foundation of education. So like that's one of those things when I see people that do spend 700 on a certification when, and this is not to brag, but I have just taken an exam for a company to get certified as a personal trainer. I didn't buy the materials and I just took the exam because I went to college for it. I have a degree in kinesiology. I have a master's. And so it's much easier for me to know entry level education, especially since I have also helped out with the development of exams. So that was my advice. I just have to reiterate that definitely the mindset of what's quick, easy, that is not where you want to be in the industry. If you're thinking, I do want something cheap so that I can spend that money on a more advanced certification, like an advanced training certification or something as some type of specialty certification, yeah, get that cheaper one, invest more in your future because there is going to be a chance that you're going to stick around longer.
I think that's an excellent idea. And I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And I guess where I had an issue with where this particular post came from was that she failed the exam the first time. Mm-hmm. So she was looking for a shortcut, which doesn't necessarily suggest to me that this is someone who wants to achieve great things.
Yep, exactly.
And study harder or study more. And it's fascinating what you mentioned here, Tyler, about, what is the benchmark to get in? Mm-hmm. Is the benchmark to get in and affect people with their health and well-being, is it high enough?
Yeah.
And I think that you and I probably have some very similar thoughts around that.
Agree. And it comes from experience. Being in the industry, you start to learn these types of things. And I've said in the past that with learning the higher things of who's running the industries or how things come about, it comes with experience. Probably after a year and a half, 2 years, once you got the groove of it, and once you're not as worried if you're gonna be able to make a living being a personal trainer. And so those things come with time. But something that I do want to get back to is in Canada with new certifications. So since I briefly touched on specialty certifications and new certifications coming in Canada, are new certifications entering the market, like whether it's indoor cycling or whether maybe it's on some special modality, some type of suspension training, or is it pretty relatively easy for a certification like that to get into the market?
Can we take a moment here and talk about the differences between earning a certificate and a certification?
Yes.
So certification. What is a certification? A certification shows that you've met the standard minimum requirements for knowledge, and you then have to write an exam to display the knowledge that you've learned. You then also have to continue to get continuing education credits. And some programs, some certifications, it's every year. The other ones are every 2 years. But essentially, in order to have a certification, you have to keep going and submit paperwork and pay dues. It's like a professional membership. So Whereas a certificate, there's a few different types of certificates, but a certificate would be something from a cycling facility. A certificate would be something like Zumba. A certificate would be something like TRX. Now, they may have you write an exam in order for you to get continuing education credits for completing it, but it doesn't mean that it is a professionally recognized body. And this is where people in the industry get so confused. And, I don't think the industry itself is helping with this, because things like Zumba, for example, and I'll just use Zumba group fitness. I'm not picking on them, but this is one that comes up all the time. Well, you have to pay dues to be a Zin member.
Mm-hmm.
You have to pay dues to get choreography and access to music every month. You have to re-register to continue to be a member of Zumba. But it's still a certificate. It's not a certification. So people get really confused. And it's the first thing when someone starts talking about certificates or certification, I'm like, that's not the same thing. So yeah, I mean, it's super easy to get continuing education credits or certificate programs into Canada.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and let me back up a minute here, because I wouldn't say it's super easy to do. The industry is absolutely open to it. However, there are certain criteria that you have to meet. Like, you have to submit your resume, your biography, your accreditations, and your certifications. You have to supply an outline, an agenda. There's a whole bunch of information that you have to submit in order for them to take a look to say, yes, we will grant you the ability to give people that participate in your program X number of continuing education credits. As far as additional certifications coming into Canada, we are somewhat closed off from that. And, we spoke earlier, Tyler, about how we don't have those third-party accreditation companies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why there's not a lot of fighting for space to bring in new certification programs, because we don't need it.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the ones recognized from the US, we've got the ones recognized nationally, and then we've got the ones that are recognized provincially. We don't need more.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need more to muddy the water.
Oh, yeah.
So I hope that answered your question. It was it could have gone two ways, that question.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I addressed both points on that.
No, it was good. And I think it's great that you talk about certificates and certifications, because I can speak from experience with having these conversations with individuals, owners, that when, and I'm trying to figure out the nicest way and also political way to say this, since I'm the host of the podcast, that
stay friends with everybody.
exactly, that sometimes some organizations just want to slap certification. You are certified, and this is a certification. They just want to slap it on there because they believe that the consumer wants to see that they have to see that. And even with wording on a certificate, that a certificate of achievement, even, that some consumers will even get upset if it doesn't say certified or certificate. And so then the organizations have to get, I don't want to say that they are getting tricky, or they're getting, they're just getting smart with how they word it to make sure the consumer is happy about it. So that definitely plays into it a lot, that the word certification, and I've said this, and it's not bad to say, because it's true, is that the word certification in the US has been just dragged through the mud. That anybody can say it's a certification, whatever they're doing, whatever new program that's online for 2 hours, this is a certification. And so it's unfortunate. And when I see those types of things, especially because something that you briefly touched on, that I've had that I've done for 4 different companies technically, that I've had to do the applying, but also reviewing of programs. So if they want to get CEU approval from an organization, I've been that person that
Mm-hmm.
reviews the programs. And I used to be kind of a stickler, but at the same time, I knew the other different people at the different organizations. So I knew what they also looked for. And so when I would review a program, if they didn't have the appropriate um, items a part of their application, I was nice, and I will say that I didn't charge them, even though some organizations will charge you if they just even look at it, and they'll deny you. That I wouldn't charge them, but I would just tell them that here's XYZ that you need to include in this to make sure that it is valid, that it's based on science, all these types of things. And then I allow them to resubmit. This was in the past, but those are things that even in the US, some people do not know the difference. That they think that if something is CEU approved, that it's accredited by them. So they throw these terms around: certification, accredited, CEU approval, like they mean all the same thing, and it doesn't. That's something that should be said even more. That CEU approvals are one of the easiest things to get technically,
Mm-hmm.
and it's at the bottom of the chain. So when you work your way up, and if you are getting some type of accreditation, that is something that is very costly. It is something that takes a lot of time. That's going to take a year and a half to 3 years for an organization in the States. So those are just things that industry pros should hopefully learn as they go through the years. And so let's shift it now. Let's get to our podcast takeaway now. And I would love to just get your insight on the fitness industry for both. For how do you see, because I would love to hear from an outside perspective, how you see things going in the US with your knowledge of the fitness industry out here. But also, let's start with in Canada. How do you think things are going to shift or stay the same as people start to get vaccinated, gyms start to reopen? Do you think that at home fitness, all these things, what are your thoughts on all that kind of good stuff?
Gosh, what a great question, because where's my crystal ball? And I mentioned it earlier, Tyler, that there are a number of fitness professionals right now that are just sitting on the sidelines, and they're not
Mm-hmm.
taking that leap to get into the virtual world because they are simply waiting for the day that the gyms reopen. And it's those individuals that are going out and collaborating with other like-minded individuals that are
Yeah.
starting these great programs for at-home fitness. Yeah, let's just take a big overview, a bird's eye view for a moment here. If we truly look at the percentage of either the Canadian or the US population that have gym memberships, it's 15%.
Mm.
It might be 14 and 17 in Canada, but let's just say 15%, which leaves 85% of the population that has no or limited access to working out.
Mm.
So I think the individuals that are just waiting for the gyms to reopen so that they can go and teach, or so that they can go and do personal training, I think they're missing a huge opportunity here, because we have not even touched the amount of people that are perfect for
Mm-hmm.
at-home workouts. I mean, there's a reason why these individuals aren't coming to the gym. There's a reason why these individuals aren't buying gym memberships.
Mm-hmm.
So let's focus our attention on those people. And I do think that facilities both in Canada and the US will need to focus and come up with a hybrid model.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned your home gym, and you sound completely happy working
Mm-hmm.
out in your home gym. Myself, I love being around people. And so I've got a great setup at home, but if I can go somewhere else and do my workout with people or lead people, then that is my happy place. So gyms need to be able to provide a hybrid model, not only to connect with their current member base, but also reach out and focus on some of those client populations that they haven't even tapped into yet. And you know, what was it? The ACSM annual forecast just came out. And what's their number one fitness trend for 2021? It's online training. So for people that are really waiting for things to just go back to normal, that's okay. There's going to be a place for them. Absolutely. And that's not a bad thing. But I want people to get onto the virtual model because I think that there's a lot that we can do, not just for our own monetary income, but for the health and well-being of everyone. That's kind of that's my thoughts on it.
No, I'll say the positive approach for it, because you could have, given some, I'm not sure because we don't XYZ factors, but you looked at the population that does need help, because that is something that I feel like many people do not. They don't think about those people that aren't going to the gym, that do need access or some type of help in getting their health on track, or get it moving. Just get moving in somehow. So I appreciate the positive spin on it, because that's something that many fitness pros will not think about. So that's a problem to solve for many. So if you could figure out that solution, just even get a very small, minuscule percentage of that for your business, you got something figured out there, something special. So Karyn, before we start to sign off here, can you give the listeners your social media links or any information about a website or how they can contact you?
Sure, absolutely. So I am a pro trainer with CanFitPro, which means I help people that want to become certified, to become group fitness instructors. I walk them through that process. So you can find me on any of the CanFitPro websites, but I also have my own website. It's CalgaryFitnessInstructorTraining.com. Yes, it's very long. In retrospect, I was like, why didn't I just use my name? And on there, you can see all of the different companies that I work with and companies in the US, because I'm also a master trainer for ICG and a master trainer for Life Fitness Academy, working with individuals across North America. And yeah, I think that's probably about it. Instagram and my website. Oh, and Facebook, which is how we connected. And Facebook, it's just little old me, Karyn Silenzi.
Silenzi, there we go. Perfect. Karyn, thank you for coming on the KIPS podcast, sharing all this information, because it's very fascinating. As I mentioned, and I kicked off the podcast talking about having friends in different areas of the world and just learning about the differences in the industry. These are things that you should hopefully want to know. How is your industry in different parts of the globe? How is it growing? Where are they at? And because you never know. You never know of opportunities, and that's really a great thing that we talk about, the different opportunities and growing and all that kind of stuff. So Karyn, thank you again.
Oh, thank you so much, Tyler.